and a warm welcome. You've joined us on a brand new edition of Budget Bulletin. A slew of exclusives lined up on the show today. Will Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget manage to meet the sky-high hopes of India's middle class, especially the salaried class? Centre may also be looking to simplify income tax filings to make it less tedious for taxpayers. We take a deep dive into the macro picture with Abhik Barua. And the buck doesn't stop there though. Centre may be looking at some kind of investment fillip to help India surpass 220 megawatt target over the next 5 years. Details coming up on the show in just a bit. But first up, moving on to an budget exclusive. Remember, we told you that the Finance Ministry would tweak income tax slabs. But now sources are telling ET now that the government is also likely to unveil a revamped Income Tax Act to streamline compliance and procedures. My colleague Prakash Priyadarshi is now joining us with all the details. Prakash, over to you.
Simplified IT Act in the upcoming budget. We're given to understand that the draft for the Simplified Act is ready, which could be announced by the Finance Minister. Sources are suggesting that the revamped IT Act aims to simplify process and streamline procedures, compliance without making significant changes in the policy. As you are aware that the Finance Minister had made an announcement in the July budget last year about the government intention where the FM has clearly highlighted the need to rewrite IT Act to simplify language process and of course streamline compliance to reduce litigation and disputes. Thereafter, the government had made significant progress, in fact put in efforts, and now the draft is ready, which could be announced by the Finance Minister, which is largely focused on simplifying the process and procedures rather than altering tax rates. Along with that, the objective is to eliminate redundant laws and procedures and simplify tax deducted at source and various other procedures. And of course, that is going to be very beneficial for the taxpayers going forward.
And to understand all this and more in detail and what are the expectations from Budget 2025, we now have independent economist Abhik Barua now joining us. Mr. Barua, thank you so much for taking your time out and speaking with us here on ET Now, especially when it comes to Budget 2025. And first up, since we are on the topic of income tax, consumption clearly has taken a hit over the last few years. What are your expectations with respect to income tax tweaks that could come in the budget? Do you expect some relief? Sources, in fact, are telling ET now that perhaps some tweaks for lower income class could come in. Do you expect that, especially with the objective of boosting consumption, mass consumption?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think the problem is with mass consumption. And mass consumption doesn't refer to the absolute bottom of the pyramid, but really to the lower tiers of the middle class. And especially when you sort of move from 15 lakhs to 15 lakhs plus, there is a very large jump in the tax rate. I think that is one area that could get the finance minister's attention, and perhaps, compliance procedure streamlining does help to a point. But I think in a situation where clearly, despite whatever the GDP numbers have shown this year, there is a problem of mass consumption. I think a reduction in the rate, whether you call it a tweak or you call it a direct reduction, is an important, counter-cyclical fiscal measures. And I certainly expect something on that front, because I think there is broad recognition in government, in policy circles, of the fact that consumption is suffering and something needs to be done about.
As far as consumption is concerned, and to just put some facts and figures over here, data suggests that consumption has slowed down to 5.4% versus pre-COVID average of about 7%. Apart from income tax relief, any other policy measures that you expect from the government?
Look, I think one of the things that I would, recommend, and often, expectations and wishes tend to kind of overlap with each other. But I think there is a need for, and I think this is being talked about in the context of the coming budget, is that I think there is a need to allocate a little more to some of the welfare schemes. For instance, increase Narega wages. There could be something on an increase in PM Kisan. I think we need to put money in the hands of people who are not necessarily within in the tax pool. So I think this effort to kind of boost consumption has multiple components to it, and I think to sort of get to what it would do to the fiscal deficit and so forth. I think what has happened clearly this year is that capex has fallen behind. So you can actually get an increase in capex with the same funds this year, and pay a little more attention to increasing focused revenue spending to put money in the hands of the people of people, especially as you pointed out, the low middle class and those who fall below the low middle class. And here, there I sort of mentioned these welfare schemes, which perhaps need more allocation.
Need more allocation, that's the word coming in. But Mr. Barua, since you spoke about capex and that perhaps in the first half of this year capex was not focused on account of election, on account of monsoon, railway was a theme a couple of years ago, but now focus has shifted to manufacturing and capex. What will the figure be that you're aiming for in this budget? Above 11.5 lakh crore, will that be the figure that you're working with?
I would think so. Perhaps maybe even a little less, but around that, certainly not an increase over that. So it sort of peaked last a couple of years back, and then it sort of kind of has steadied. I think a lot of capex has been put in, public sector capex has been put in place, and we see the results of that coming through in the form of better infrastructure, which is leading to better efficiency and so forth. So 11,500 crores, 11.5 lakh crores is the number, which I broadly think will kind of remain this year.
Patience with respect to budget. Mr. Barua, thank you so much for joining us on ET Now and helping us understand what the expectations are from Budget 2025. Shifting focus.
My pleasure entirely.
Shifting focus to another exclusive then, sources tell ET Now that the government may announce a mega battery storage plan in the upcoming budget, where it will be mandatory for all renewable energy projects to make space for battery storage. My colleague Prakash Priyadarshi is now joining us with more details. Prakash, over to you.
Yes, we are learning from our sources that the government is likely to announce a mega plan for battery storage capacity in the upcoming budget. We are given to understand that the renewable energy developers will be required to mandatorily set up battery storage capacity, and therefore all projects will include a certain amount of battery storage capacity. Developers are likely to receive financial support from the government for setting up of battery storage projects. These projects will be very crucial when it comes to India's renewable energy obligation. We are given to understand that the battery storage capacity is projected to exceed 220 gigawatt in the next 5 years as compared to 220 megawatt at this point of time. A very significant development coming in. In addition to that, what we are also learning from our sources that the government may announce a comprehensive renewable energy zone where a variety of renewable energy projects will be set up in a dedicated zone, such as solar, wind, green hydrogen, green ammonia, etc. MNRE is of the view that days are gone for the dedicated zone for a single renewable energy project, and therefore a comprehensive zone will be announced to cover all kind of renewable energy projects, and states will bid for a dedicated renewable energy zone. Along with that, the sources are also informing that the government may announce incentive for banks and financial institutions to boost funding for the renewable energy sector. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has sent these proposals to the Finance Ministry, and we are expecting that the government may announce some of these proposals in the upcoming budget.
Focus will continue to be on renewable energy expansion. That's the word coming in. Thank you, Prakash, for joining us with all those details. But as we wind down on this edition of Budget Bulletin, here's a word from Wari Energy's Hitesh Doshi on what he expects from the upcoming budget. Listen in.
The solar industry, definitely there are the challenges in terms of the land or the grid connections, and government is working on that with the solar land parks, as well as getting more and more the grid connections. So as a manufacturing, definitely we expect the government, maybe not only the solar, it is the batteries or all other products which require in the entire ecosystem, that we should make them in India if we want to use them in India. And we know that government is working in this direction to promote a made in India. And any raw materials also, which we are importing today from the outside, that also government is working to make it India. So from this budget, as a manufacturers, as a service providers, there are simple 2-3 requirements in terms of the taking out the hurdles from putting up the solar panels or manufacturing, and another is how we increase more and more make in India. But there's no need to make this demand, as government is already working in these directions. Of course, when it comes to the manufacturing, we have requested through our associations to go back to the 15% tax regime to promote more and more manufacturing in the country.